Does 中国 truly mean a nation located at the center of the world? A single name bears thousands of years of civilization. Today, we explore the origin and evolution of the term 中国. To begin with, we shall start with the writing systems and political systems of that era. Let's begin with the structure of Oracle bone script. 气 山 水 雨 雪 花木树，
一座房子，一条路，一座山，一条河，一只小船，一个我，一颗心，一把火，一个木瓜，一个你，划着船过了河，你在水边看着我。
川
一朵花，一棵树，一座房子，一条路，一座山，一条河，一只小船，一个我，一颗心，一把火，一个木瓜，一个你，划着船过了河，你在水边看着我。
小的一片云呀，慢慢地走过来，请你们歇歇脚呀，暂时停下来。山上的山花开呀，我才到山上来。原来嘛你小小的一片云呀，慢慢地走过来，请你们歇歇脚呀，暂时停下来。山上的山花开呀，我才到山上来。原来嘛你
月，排消。鱼。 Before the emergence of a mature writing system, there is usually a long period of evolution. Now, let's look at several examples of primitive writing. The essence of hieroglyphs is to record human cognition through visuals. The primitive symbols at this site share many similarities with oracle bones and bronzes, proving the possibility of cultural inheritance between them. Interestingly, the ancient Yi script before standardization is highly similar to the primitive characters discovered at many contemporary sites. However, among the Yi people, their various languages are not mutually intelligible. In addition, some character forms of oracle bone script and ancient Yi script are highly similar, with a few sharing the same meanings. Some scholars argue that ancient Yi script and oracle bone script originated from the same source, but evolved into separate systems. In the historical evolution of Yi society, there was never a genuine separation between primitive religion and historical recording. Most Yi scripts and documents were transcribed and passed down through generations by the Bimo, the traditional ritual specialists of the Yi people, and were primarily applied to primitive religious activities. Consequently, Yi literature remains in a developmental stage, where diverse disciplines are integrated under the dominance of primitive religion, with few specialized works featuring distinct disciplinary characteristics. The writing of the Shang dynasty is quite similar to ancient Yi script in function, mainly serving sacrificial divination, ancestor worship, royal military and political affairs, and aristocratic clan activities. Over 80% of oracle bone inscriptions were used for divination, covering sacrifices to gods and ancestors, prayers for rain and grain, military fortunes, illnesses, and disasters. Bronze inscriptions first appeared in the late Shang dynasty, about 3,200 years ago. No complete long literary works of the Shang have been discovered, and only a small number of short prose texts have been preserved. Most scholars believe that the Shang dynasty once had ballads, sacrificial chants, and mythic epics, which were mostly written on bamboo and wooden slips. These documents were completely lost due to the decay of wood and bamboo. Because the oracle bone script of the Shang already has the characters 册安地点. Documents dating to roughly the 11th century BC record that early Zhou kings mentioned, when governing the former Shang officials, that the Shang dynasty already possessed 册安地点. However, archaeological discoveries have only unearthed relics of such documents from the late Zhou dynasty. This fully proves that bamboo and wooden materials are difficult to preserve over long periods. The Zhou dynasty witnessed the first full-scale flourishing of Han Chinese literature. It compiled and preserved historical records of the Shang dynasty, covering its origin, founding, royal lineage, capital migrations, golden age, and eventual collapse, as well as accounts of the earlier Xiaoye dynasty. Official dynastic chronology in traditional historical records begins with the Xiaoye, dated to approximately 2070 BC. Dated to approximately 2070 BC. Zhou texts even document the tribal eras preceding the Xiaoye, filled with legends and mythological tales. It is reasonable to infer that early primitive writing was primarily used for simple marking and divination, and remained monopolized by the nobility. Alternatively, writing may have emerged far earlier yet failed to endure due to fragile writing materials. Bone and turtle shell divination was already practiced long before the Shang, though inscriptions were not carved onto these artifacts as they were in the Shang period. To date, no discovered Shang texts directly mention the Xiaoye dynasty. Nevertheless, Shang oracle inscriptions reference a polity named Zhi, which Zhou writings explicitly identify as the Xiaoye. For this reason, it remains uncertain whether Xiaoye served as the official dynastic title, the self-appellation of its people, or a designation constructed and invented by the Zhou. Archaeologists have long dedicated themselves to uncovering traces of the Xiaoye civilization. Still, in the absence of conclusive contemporary written records of the Xiaoye, scholars continue to hold divided opinions and ongoing debates. Give a brief introduction to the historical records on the establishment of the Xiaoye dynasty. The floodwaters covered the whole land. Yao, leader of the tribal alliance, first appointed Gun to harness the floods. Yet he made no progress for a long time. After Sheng succeeded as leader of the tribal alliance, he commissioned Yu to regulate land and water. Yu dredged rivers along mountain terrains and put an end to the flood disaster. By virtue of his great achievement in flood control, Yu succeeded to the leadership through Sheng's voluntary abdication. He divided the territory of the realm into the 9 provinces and formulated the tribute system based on the quality of land. Later legends record that the Xiaoye dynasty cast the 9 tripods symbolizing the 9 provinces, which stood for the supreme royal power of the central government. Yu laid the foundation for the Xiaoye dynasty, and his son Qi formally established the hereditary system of family rule over the realm. One scholar has interpreted this passage with ancient Yi script. He conducted divination to ward off ghosts and evil spirits, prayed and made offerings to Apudyu, the first ancestor of the Yi race who lived after the Great Deluge, in hope of enduring good luck. Divination rites were performed using the leg and foot bones of hundreds of chickens. Similar forms of these 2 characters can be found in oracle bone inscriptions or bronze inscriptions. The character Wen originally referred to tattoos, textures and patterns on artifacts. In the Shang dynasty, it also carried the meanings, writing, carved lines, literary talent, kindness and moral virtue. The character Yi illustrates an orderly settlement surrounded by city walls, originally referring to a capital and even an early state. This site is considered one of the important sites of the Huaxia Huaxia people, and it dates back to the tribal confederation era. A number of academics suggest that the ancient Yi writing might share ancestral links with the symbol carving systems from prehistoric Dongyi areas. At the same time, archaeological findings have demonstrated that the Yangtze River Basin had several distinct regional traditions of symbol carving transmission, and different ancient cultures widely exchanged and shared these symbols. As early as the Shang dynasty, terms for surrounding ethnic groups had already appeared in oracle bone inscriptions. After the founding of the Zhou dynasty, it established a state governance system centered on the ritual and music system to maintain political order and cultural cohesion. From 977 BC to 476 BC, the classification of ethnic groups in the 4 directions gradually took shape. It should be clarified that the collective term for ethnic groups in the same direction does not refer to a single homogeneous nation, but is a broad classification based on geographical distribution and cultural characteristics. Initially, these directional terms were only used to distinguish residential areas and production and living customs. Although they already carried a sense of tribal opposition in the Shang dynasty, they did not have strong derogatory or discriminatory connotations. Later, with the continuous growth of Huaxia civilization, the continuous expansion of its territory, and the sense of ethnic identity gradually strengthened, the Central Plains gradually regarded the surrounding ethnic groups as uncivilized groups lacking ritual and music education, and these ancient directional terms were completely endowed with fixed derogatory meanings. Perhaps the historical facts of remote antiquity were passed down mainly by word of mouth, while some early written records have been preserved. The Zhou dynasty not only kept accounts of the Xiaoye dynasty, but also retained numerous historical relics and legends from the prehistoric tribal era. Due to the immense passage of time, many of these accounts are blended with mythological elements. Of course, it is also possible that the Zhou people deliberately organized and constructed a common ancestral lineage for all under heaven, aiming to unify different ethnic groups and strengthen cultural identity. The ancestors of the Huaxia Huaxia people were not a single consanguineous group, but a large tribal alliance formed through long-term warfare, intermarriage, and assimilation, with the Yan Emperor and Yellow Emperor tribes as its core backbone. In ancient times, frequent conflicts and wars broke out among various tribes. It was also common for stronger tribes to conquer, absorb, and merge weaker ones, which became the normal pattern of prehistoric ethnic development. In the tribal age, the ancestors of Huaxia and the Dongyi maintained a relationship of both rivalry and alliance, with frequent talent exchanges, tribal intermarriages, and political cooperation. After the establishment of the Xiaoye dynasty, its forces expanded eastward and absorbed and integrated some Dongyi tribes. From the beginning of its founding, the Shang dynasty had frequent conflicts with the Dongyi. In the late Shang dynasty, King Zhou launched a large-scale expedition against the Dongyi. Although he conquered major Dongyi forces such as the Huayi, he did not completely occupy all Dongyi territories. Years of warfare greatly depleted the Shang dynasty's national strength and emptied its domestic elite troops, objectively creating favorable conditions for the rise of the Zhou tribe and its eventual conquest of the Shang. The mainstream academic view holds that the Shang clan had extremely deep origins with the Dongdi. Although it cannot be completely equated with the traditional Dongdi tribes, it generally belongs to the Dongdi cultural circle in terms of ethnic culture and customs. Of course, the historical records passed down from the tribal era are mixed with many myths and legends, and with the continuous advancement of archaeological discoveries, combined with documentary records, multiple hypotheses about ethnic origins have emerged. Maintaining a great unification for nearly 400 years, the Han dynasty gradually formed and consolidated the ethnic identity of the Han people, Hanren, through long-term interactions with surrounding ethnic groups such as the Zhangnu, Xiongnu. It is this culture-centered collective identity, together with multiple large-scale population migrations in later ages, that makes it hard for later generations to fully sort out the complex ethnic integration lineage of their ancestors. The Han people of later generations not only call themselves Han people, but also inherit the ancient title of Huaxia. Huaxia. Throughout history, Han groups from different regions have continuously infused fresh blood into Han culture. Even many non-agricultural ethnic groups have voluntarily or involuntarily integrated into this cultural and ethnic community out of cultural identity or political factors. In fact, the Huaxia ethnic group itself is a cultural and political community formed by the integration of different tribal alliances, including those of the Shang and Zhou dynasties. This tradition of integration was established from the very beginning of Chinese civilization. Looking at historical maps, we can see that the territories of the Shang and Zhou dynasties were divided into multiple layered regions, stemming from their unique political systems. Among them, the Shang dynasty adopted the system of internal domain and external domain, 内外府制度. The Zhou dynasty practiced the enfeoffment system, 分封制. The Zhou king enfeoffed land and people to royal clansmen, meritorious officials, and nobles of ancient dynasties to establish vassal states. Vassal rulers enjoyed governing power within their states, inherited titles hereditarily, and administered civil affairs, taxes, and armies independently. Meanwhile, they had to obey the Zhou king's orders, pay regular tributes, join military campaigns, and guard the frontier. Historically, the Zhou dynasty is divided into the Western Zhou and the Eastern Zhou, and the Eastern Zhou is further split into the Spring and Autumn period and the Warring States period. During the Spring and Autumn period, feudal lords vied to take control of the Zhou king, using his name to give orders to other lords and compete for hegemony. At that time, the Zhou king kept only a nominal title with no real power, and was completely marginalized by the feudal lords. In the Warring States period, the ritual and music system collapsed completely. The Zhou king lost all his authority, and the powerful regional kingdoms swallowed up smaller states one by one in pursuit of unifying the realm. Now that we've sorted out the political system back then, let's explore the meaning of 中国. 中. The flagpole stands in the center of the circle, symbolizing the middle and the center. 国. The original meaning of this character is to defend a city with weapons. In the early Shang and Zhou dynasties, 国 referred to the fiefdoms of feudal lords or the territories governed by the king of Zhou. Later, to distinguish it from another character, a circular enclosure was added around it to emphasize territorial boundaries. After the Warring States period, it took on the meaning of a nation or state. There were several variant forms of this character in history, none of which were mainstream. After the founding of the People's Republic of China, a dot was added to the third variant. This symbolizes that the country is no longer the private property of emperors, but a precious treasure belonging to all the people. Within its territorial boundaries lie treasures, virtue, and civilization. In 1956, to popularize education and improve writing efficiency, Chinese mainland standardized and simplified Chinese characters. Over 95% of today's simplified characters already existed in ancient times. They derive from ancient standard characters, folk casual scripts, regularized cursive forms, and variant characters of different dynasties. Ancient people also found traditional characters overly complicated in strokes, and they tried to reduce the strokes of some characters in daily writing. laying a solid historical foundation for later Chinese character simplification. Various ancient typefaces have now become subjects of study for calligraphy lovers and ancient Chinese enthusiasts. We can learn oracle bone script of the Shang dynasty, bronze inscriptions of the Zhou dynasty, small seal script of the Qin dynasty, as well as clerical script and cursive script of the Han dynasty. 中国, the word was never used in the Shang dynasty, yet the Shang had equivalent self-titles. They denoted the royal central domain, the geographic middle and cultural core of their perceived world. 中国. In the Western Zhou period, the term originally meant the land of the capital and royal domain, bearing dual connotations as the political hub of the realm and the center of Huaxia civilization. In the Eastern Zhou period, its core meaning referred to the Huaxia cultural community that upheld the rituals and music system of the Central Plains, dominated by the Central Plains vassal states. If neighboring tribes and Fangguo actively integrated into the Huaxia civilization sphere, they could also be recognized as members of Zhuxia and obtain the cultural identity of Zhongguo. In 60 BC, the Western Han dynasty established the protectorate of the western regions in present-day Xinjiang. It stationed troops and established agricultural colonies, enfeoffed the kings of the various states in the western regions, appointed local leaders as officials at all levels, mediated disputes and ensured the smooth flow of the Silk Road. This marked the formal incorporation of the Xinjiang region into China's territory. 五星出东方利中国, 5 stars rise in the east, benefiting China. This was an auspicious astrological saying in the Han dynasty. 中国, it means the Central Plains or the Han dynasty. The full sentence means the 5 major planets, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter and Saturn, converge in the eastern sky, which is a highly auspicious omen and greatly favorable to the Han dynasty. 鲜卑人, the Zhangbi people entered the Central Plains and established the Northern Wei dynasty, openly regarding themselves as 中国. This broke the long-standing norm that only Han-Ru dynasties could claim the title of 中国. Thereafter, the realm split into the northern and southern dynasties, with each side proclaiming itself the sole legitimate orthodox successor of 中国. From the southern and northern dynasties onward, the simple geographical rule, whoever holds the Central Plains is China, was no longer absolute. Cultural rituals, institutions, and political legitimacy gained far greater importance. Throughout ancient history, the term Hongguo mostly referred geographically to the heartland of the Central Plains. It also served as a self-styled title for dynasties claiming orthodoxy, as well as a common external name used in foreign diplomacy. After the Northern Wei, northern ethnic regimes including the Liao, Jin, Yuan and Qing all regarded themselves as 中国 and heirs to Chinese orthodoxy, once they occupied the Central Plains and adopted traditional Chinese institutions and rituals. Now, 中国 has become the short name for the People's Republic of China.